Good morning, everyone. I was looking on the internet yesterday and I came across a thing that says ministers can dream too. And here's some things that ministers dream of hearing in their churches. Hey, it's my turn to sit in the front row. Or, I was so enthralled I never noticed your sermon went 25 minutes over time. Of course, we don't have that problem around here. Personally, I find church much more enjoyable than golf. Or Titans games. I've decided to give MCCSL the $500 a month I used to send to the TV evangelists. I volunteered to be the permanent teacher for the junior high Sunday school class. I love it when we sing songs I've never heard before. Since we're all here, let's start the service early. Woo, not around here. Minister, we'd like to send you to the spiritual conference in the Bahamas. And this is my favorite one. I couldn't find space to park outside. Anyway, just a few of the dreams of ministers. Our theme for this month is Awakening to Transformation. And transformation is in essence change. And I know that I don't know how many of you read your daily reading in the Science of Mind magazine this morning, but I loved, they had a quote from Marcus Aurelius. He said that loss is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight. I love that. I love it when God is talking to me specifically. And that happens a lot. As we discussed a few weeks ago on Easter, the process of transformation is an ever ascending upward spiral of transformation. And there's 4 stages to it. First is dissolving. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Imagining and reforming, which we'll talk about today, and flying, which we'll talk about in a few weeks. And remember that what we said a couple weeks ago, that transforming is more than just changing. It's more than just becoming a better, brighter version of what is right now. To transform is to become something or someone that has never existed before. Something brand new. Now, spiritually, we know that there's nothing to transform into or become because we are already divine. We know that. We are already perfect expressions of God. And remember the cone that I gave you. The cone, just to refresh your memory, is a seemingly paradoxical statement used in Zen Buddhism to meditate upon for enlightenment. And the cone that I gave you a couple weeks ago was transformation is the process of becoming that which you already are. So that seems a little bit paradoxical, doesn't it? If you're already that, why do you have to become that? You are already God in expression, whole, complete, and perfect. Spiritually, this is true, and at the same time, on this human plane of existence, we know that we're not always whole, complete, and perfect, right? But we are in the process of peeling away all of those layers that are covering up that spiritual magnificence within us, allowing it to shine forth. And we do that every time that we peel away another layer. I like what I've heard is that transformation is not about adding anything, it's about subtracting. those things that are in the way of our spiritual truth. And every time we transform, we move to a higher level of living in spirit. And as we are lifted up, others are lifted up too. We have that effect on each other. That's why spiritual community is so important. On Easter, we looked at the first level of dissolving. And I gave you one phrase that can help take some of the pain out of that dissolving. And that phrase was, it is until it isn't. It is until it isn't. And I have to confess, I have been having a very hard problem with that statement in my life. It is until it isn't. And today we're going to move to the next phase from dissolving to imagining, which may come after, or maybe you had a glimpse of it before your dissolution. I told the parable of the goldfish a couple weeks ago. The goldfish in the goldfish bowl transforming into a dolphin in the ocean. Our little goldfish friend had an inkling that there was something more to life before he got flushed down the toilet. And I've had hints of it in the past few months, until I returned to a puddle of goo this past week, into the dissolving stage again. But we're imagining something greater now. And the theme today, or the title is, if you can see it, you can be it. You have to imagine it first. New Thought tells us that everything is created twice. First, in the level of mind, the idea. God's mind in the macrocosm, our mind in the microcosm. And second, it is created in the physical world. Everything that has ever been created, great or small, first had its place in the mind of God or in the human imagination. And creation is eloquently, I think, and simply described in the Gospel of John in the words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And I believe that the Word is that spoken idea, spoken into creation. In the beginning was an idea of greater and greater life expression, of God desiring to see his creative power, or her creative power, or its creative power, whatever it is. An idea of greater and greater life expression planted in that rich creative soil of the divine mind. Imagination, our imaginations are very powerful. More powerful than we even give them credit for. Imagination is the threshold of creation. But just imagination is not enough. We have to have passion and enthusiasm present. Feeling. We can know the truth, but if we feel it, we'll see the truth. We'll be the truth. Ernest Holmes, our founder, writes in The Science of Mind, we must relight the torch of our imagination by fire caught from heaven. At the human level, there is a spark of an idea. We get a spark of an idea, and that sets this divine creative process in motion. But we have to stoke that fire. We have to feed that fire. Keep that feeling going. I love the way Shakespeare describes the creative process in a poet. He does it very poetically, of course. He writes, as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, The poet's pen turns them to shape and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Isn't that beautiful? It's a fact that imagination, together with passion and enthusiasm, take hold of what seems to be an airy nothing, making something from it. But the truth is, there is really nothing, no such thing as an airy nothing. What it is what Holmes calls the ethers, or the substance, or the universal energy of infinite potential in the universe. And this is sensitive to our thoughts and our beliefs. Our self-conscious contemplation is what brings that airy nothing into form. Our imagination calls this universal energy into action. Our imagination is an amazing dynamic force. And we can do amazing things with it when we have that passion and that enthusiasm and that feeling and that knowing that our idea is going to become visible in our lives. Thomas Troward, I know we have quite a few Thomas Troward students in attendance today because we have the Thomas Troward whisperer, Reverend Franklin over here, who has made Thomas Troward very famous around MCCSL. Thomas Troward has said, having seen and felt the end, you have secured the means to the realization of the end. So what he's saying, that when you have your idea and you feel it and you know it, that is the means to the realization. We know what? God knows how. That creative process. We don't know how it works. We just know that it works. And in The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, we can so fill ourselves with the drawing power of attraction that it will become irresistible. That's what our passion and our enthusiasm does. Nothing can hinder us when we know that we're dealing with the one power that creates all from itself, moves all within itself, yet holds everything in its place. So, imagining. The first step is to first envision what you want in your life. And dream big. Get a mental concept of that thing, a spiritual prototype. See yourself as doing it, as being it. Feel it. Gain passion and enthusiasm for your idea. I love what Walt Disney once said. He says, if you can dream it, you can do it. Always remember, this whole thing was started by a mouse. When you think about it, that's just amazing, isn't it? This little mouse character. Look at what it became. Talk about infinite possibility. Ernest Holmes, I love these words of Ernest Holmes. Free yourself forever from the thought that God may be pleased by a life of sacrifice, that the world is any better because of your misery, or that righteousness is more perfectly expressed through poverty than abundance. Know that the greater abundance of every good thing which you are bringing out in your life, the more perfectly you are satisfying the divine urge within you. Anything you can dream of is not too great for you to undertake. We sell ourselves short a lot, don't we? Second, have faith in your dream. Have faith in that which you imagined. Have the faith of God, not faith in God, but the faith of God. Because that faith of God is your inheritance. It is within you. Bring it out. All things are possible to him that believes, him who believes. Ask and it will be given unto you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened unto you. According to your faith be it done to you. These are all words from the master teacher Jesus. All words declaring the power of our faith. The power of our faith to bring to manifestation that which we imagine. And third is to begin to act on that faith. When you have an idea and you feel passion and enthusiasm for it, when you feel it and know it, take action. Pushing forward with perseverance, determination, and courage toward achieving your goal. And I was thinking about this week. Dr. Karen Kushner from the Princeton, New Jersey Center for Spiritual Living was at the Edwene Gaines conference that I attended a few weeks ago. And she was one of the ministers on the oral panel that evaluated me as I was becoming a minister 12 years ago. And I hadn't seen her for many years, and we reconnected, and throughout the week we decided that we would become prayer partners, that we would call each other once a week and do spiritual mind treatment and do that for each other during the week. And we connected by phone this Friday, and Friday morning I had returned to that puddle of goo on Thursday. The puddle of goo, for those of you that weren't here a couple weeks ago, is actually what a caterpillar turns to in the cocoon. He doesn't just turn into a butterfly. First, he returns to a puddle of goo, of liquid DNA, out of which this transformation into a butterfly happens. And I was starting my transformation, but I returned to a puddle of goo, despairing of any dream of the future. I had nothing specifically to give Karen to pray for except deliverance. So I asked her what she wanted to treat for. She had told me during the conference that she's going through her own transformation with her job as a minister. She'd been there for 22 years. And ministers and churches have to recreate themselves. They have to transform. We all have to transform. As the quote I gave you before I started the talk, loss is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight. So she's going through her own reinvention, her own evolution, her own wanting something more. And she said, I want you to treat for me for determination. And I immediately resonated with that and said, that's what I want too. Me too. I wanted back on the track of transformation. And as Jesus said, when I be lifted up, others are lifted as well. She helped to lift me up just by sharing her journey with me. And once again, that's what spiritual community is all about. That's what we do as a community for each other, and what we do as much as we can for our outside world. If we be lifted up from that puddle of goo that becomes the butterfly, we must practice determination perseverance. We must stay filled with enthusiasm. So our imagination's a powerful part of the transformation process. So I ask you all today to go within you. How are you using your imagination in your life today? Are you using it to imagine a bleak future? Or are you dreaming of becoming that butterfly? And use it to do more than just having more money or more abundance. Because our lives are much broader than that. Use it to create and be a part of a world that works for everyone, as we say in our teaching, Centers for Spiritual Living. Our mission is to create a world that works for everyone. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, writes in his book, Practical Application of the Science of Mind, which is out of print, he says, there is a dynamic principle of growth and development in the universe which continually seeks greater expression. Over and above the purely physical aspects of the growth and development of all living things, something new and different makes its appearance in us. In the human, there is an additional channel for growth and increase. And that additional channel that we have that no other living thing has is self-consciousness. We are co-creators. Hence, we discover in the function of mind, in the creative activity of thought, a continual urge to create and express. Our activity of thought is actually a divine compulsion of the one mind in us, seeking an increasing achievement and expression through us. How do we do that? We imagine first. The forms and the outlets for this self-conscious process of thought, which appears as a unique creation of life in us, may manifest in many ways. For some, the fulfillment of this inner drive may be found in a new home, a larger paycheck, increased business activity, better health, as well as an increasing desire for a greater spiritual awareness. All of these are urges of the indwelling intelligence that we either choke down or give expression to. I love that phrase. That we either choke down or give expression to. It reminds me, Gene knows the Gnostic Gospel verse. What is that, Gene? It either saves you or kills you.
You have to, I don't have it in my head right now, but if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you will kill you.
I love that. So all of these urges of the indwelling intelligence, we either choke down or we give expression to. We can't stand still. We have to continue to express this action of life within us, because if we deny ourselves of this activity, we deny ourselves of the very creativity that life is. Nature's delight. And it's through our imagining that this divine urge is activated in us. And it's through our imagining that we are propelled forward in our lives. So take a moment right now to go within yourself and think right now of something that you had in your imagination, a divine urge within you that's calling you to do, to be, to experience something greater. And find that within you and identify it. So once we have our idea that is wanting to express through us, we move to becoming a reformed religious scientist. I like to say Centers for Spiritual Living is the reformed sect of religious science. Because we're always reforming. We're always letting go of the past, recreating. So the question of the morning is, how must you reform in order for this transformation which you have in your imagination to take place? What layers that are covering up your spiritual magnificence do you need to remove, to change? I know a lot of us are going through this in our own lives. We're going through this as a center here at the Music City Center for Spiritual Living. How must we reform for a transformation and growth of Music City Center for Spiritual Living? I'd like to share just a little bit of my experience of reforming as I've been going through my own transformation, which you've all been witness to and shared in. I've dissolved, I've imagined, I've dissolved again, I've acted in determination, and I've returned to a puddle of goo to reimagine and become determined again. Remember, all of the stages of transformation are not always linear. It's an upward spiral. Evolution is an upward spiral, but it's not a perfect path. But it's part of the ever upward push of evolution. I've tried to imagine a new me, a new relationship with my world, a letting go of what is until it isn't. A future of joy, of love, abundance, and health, a greater good. And I've determined, once again, that a greater good is mine now. Say that with me. A greater good is mine now. You'll get the full version from David Arnholter, our practitioner, soon. We had it last week, didn't we? That's right. I love it. So, what shifts, changes, new ways of thinking, being, doing are you prepared to be engaged in? What ways of reforming? I like the definition of insanity that I first heard in 12-step meetings. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So easy to fall back into our conditioned patterns of thinking and doing and try to force a new result out of it. Oh, it's going to work this time. I'll make it work this time. No, we have to reform. We have to come at it from a new idea, a greater idea. We have to strip away the stuff that is blocking our spiritual magnificence from getting out. If we're not really willing to reform, we might just stay in the stage of dissolving. And there's been times where I felt like I'm back in the stage of dissolving again. I'll never get out of here. The goo of the dissolved caterpillar must be willing to reform in order to become the butterfly. And in the goldfish dolphin story that I told, the goldfish had to be willing to reform into a dolphin, or he would have been in pretty big trouble once he got flushed out into the ocean, right? It's either evolve or devolve, which reminded me of an old Bob Dylan song that I loved. I loved this line. He says, we are either busy being born or busy dying. We are either busy being born or busy dying. Holmes writes, it's a matter of common knowledge and observation that nothing in life can ever remain static or stand still. In considering our affairs, our health, or our relationships, there is always a progression or retrogression, a bettering or a worsening of the situation. Nature's edict appears to be grow and progress or regress. In other words, evolve or devolve. Get busy living or get busy dying. And I've talked about my friend Randy Barker, the guitar player, who's going to be here in a couple weeks, as a matter of fact. The wisdom of his wife, Lorraine. We had a conversation this last week, and we were talking about change, because that seems to be what's happening, a lot of change. And she said to me, change isn't as fun as it used to be. And I immediately said, that's great. Can I quote you on that? As we get older, sometimes, change isn't as fun as it used to be. I remember being younger, and change was fun. And it was going on all the time. As we get older, we get more resistant to change. But how are we going to stay young if we don't be open and receptive to change? I know that Edwene Gaines, in her little booklet, 12 Steps to Successful Achievement, says that step 4 is to be open and receptive to change. She says, pray daily. What must I change about myself in order to achieve my goals? When our practitioners have a counseling session with someone, we often ask them what they desire to feel when we are finished. Because remember, feeling is the creative force. So when we want a new car or a new wife or a new job, it's not that we want those things, we want what it feels like to have them. So we say, what is it they desire to feel when we're finished? Then when we treat, we say, whatever needs to be seen, to be understood, to be released, to be forgiven, to be healed, reversed, accepted, believed, whatever is needed so that this desired result may be made real in their lives, we accept that it is so right now. Because becoming our greater self, and having our larger, more expansive life requires us to rethink how we've been living and relating to the world up to that point. In order to be that which we see, we have to reform our consciousness. We have to reform our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our attitudes, our values, and our actions. So I invite you all now to close your eyes again. And think for a moment once again about this higher expression, this idea, this goal that you want to demonstrate in your lives. That you're imagining, that your imagination has brought to you. And now that you've located where is Spirit, your higher self, that God essence that is waiting to emerge more brilliantly, more fully, more completely, where is it calling you to reform once again? This is where we move forward. Next week, Reverend Franklin is speaking. And in 2 weeks, I'll be speaking again, and we're going to go to the fourth stage where we learn to fly. And so it is.
So it is.